All right, guys. So thanks for having me. As you've heard, my name's Sam. Usually, what I do is I work on the question of how countries should manage their natural resource wealth. So usually, this means a country will discover oil or coal or something like that, and we work with the government to try and figure out what they should do with that wealth. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and hopefully, it's a little bit more fun. But what I'd like you to think of it as is a bit of fun, hopefully with a serious purpose. So the question I'm asking is, what is the value of the environment? And this is an important question because if you can put a dollar value on the environment, then you can make a much stronger case for conserving it. And that's why the UN is making a real push to try and encourage countries to do this. The problem, of course, is that it's not easy to do. And the way that most people do it at the moment is they focus on assets that are traded. So it's easy to put a dollar value on coal reserves or oil reserves or cropland and that sort of thing. But there are many other types of natural assets that aren't traded. And that's what makes it such a challenge. Natural assets like a beautiful view, or a forest, or a clean beach, or in the case of this paper, on the value of a perfect 6-foot wave breaking along a point break, which is what I'm going to be talking about. So why would I want to think about the value of surfing? Well, the reason is because surfing is a fantastic example of a natural experiment. Now, economists are scientists, but unlike many scientists, we can't always run an experiment, and so we rely on what nature gives us. And in that sense, we're a lot like astronomers or meteorologists. And so surfing is a fantastic example of a natural experiment because nature gives you the quality of the wave, right? And that quality of that wave depends on a very fine balance of lots and lots of different environmental factors. And basically, the only reason why this balance of environmental factors would affect the economy is through surfing. And these are things like, the winds that are blowing far out to sea, or the shape of the ocean floor, or indeed the shape of the coastline. And what it all means is you get a fantastic amount of variety in a very small space, and you can exploit that variety to try and figure out how much good waves contribute to the economy. And so this is where I actually had the idea for the paper in Morocco. And you can see that there are 3 waves along here. One is really, really long in the middle, and that's a fantastic wave. It's a 4-star wave. The other 2 close by are worth much less, and so we exploit that variety. The way we do it is we scrape the internet. We found a website called WannaSurf, which is like a Wikipedia of surfing. It's got 5,000 waves all around the country, all rated for their quality. And so that's the data set we're using. And it's fantastic to be writing a paper where some of the variables are called CHOS and totally epic. It's pretty fun. But we had to figure out how are we going to then measure the effect on the economy. And for this, we needed an idea, a light bulb moment, in a sense. And our light bulb moment was light bulbs. So we decided to measure the economy using the amount of light that's emitted of a night time. We got access to some NASA satellites that measure these lights. And the great thing about it is it's very highly correlated with economic activity. But it's economic activity at a very local level, right? GDP is measured at a national level. We've got economic activity at 1 square kilometre. We've also got population at the same resolution. So we're covering the whole globe, which is pretty amazing. The great thing about lights as well is that they capture economic spillovers. So when a surfer goes to a town, he'll go and buy a block of surfboard wax, right, for $1. But that's not where it stops. That dollar gets spent on by the guy who sold him the surfboard wax. The dollar's spent on a haircut or a restaurant meal, and in that sense, the money flows around. And by using the amount of lights in the village, we're able to capture all those economic spillovers that other measures aren't able to do. And this is again is an image of Tagazout, and you can see the surf shop right in front of the mosque. This is a sort of example of the economic development we see with surfing. So the punchline that we find is that surfing adds about 1% extra growth in the surrounding 50 Ks every year. Right? So growth isn't 3% per annum, it's 4% per annum. That's pretty huge. It's worth about $22 million per wave around the world. Big bickies. It adds up to about $50 billion around the world globally. So we think that it's a pretty big effect. That's the headline number. We then think about what it does for poverty. And so this is a map of Africa. You can see that there are a lot of people who live in darkness in Africa, and we use this as a measure of extreme poverty. And so we then ask, does surfing play any role in getting people out of extreme poverty? And we find, yes, in fact, it does. These 4-star waves significantly reduce the amount of extreme poverty in developing countries by an order of about 70–80%. And the reason is because it drags people out of the countryside into the cities to start servicing surfers, selling them surfboard wax. So that was pretty encouraging. And the biggest effects are all in developing countries, as you'd expect. So what happens when a new wave's discovered? So what happened in 2007, Surfer Magazine ran a competition called the Google Earth Challenge. And what they wanted was people to traipse through Google Earth and try and figure out if they could find a wave that had never been surfed before. And they found this one just off the coast of the Namibian desert. An absolutely amazing wave, right? It goes for like a kilometre. It's outrageous. And what we found is that just around that wave, after 2007, when it was discovered, light growth exploded by about 3% per annum. So there's a really clean, natural experiment there again that we're able to exploit and show that surfing really does drive economic growth. So what are we doing next? Well, in my weekly watching of the old movie Point Break with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, this is just an excuse to get that picture up there. At the end of the movie, what they did is they travelled to Bells Beach in Australia to ride a 50-year storm. So we don't quite have a 50-year storm, but we do have a 15, 20-year storm, which is using the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And basically, we're exploiting the intra-year variation in the El Nino effect to try and figure out whether or not surfers travel to different parts of the world in different years to chase those big waves. So that's where the study's going. So as you can see, it's been a bit of fun. The field work on this has been a really onerous task, as you can imagine, but someone had to do it. But the punchline is basically that by putting a dollar value on the environment, we're able to encourage conservation, but also at the same time using it as an engine for economic development. And so what I'd really like to see is that policymakers in developing countries realise the value of their natural assets and preserve them in the interests of economic development. So we're killing two birds with one stone in a sense. How does it benefit Australia? Well, in an Australian-specific case, for the last 6 months or so, there's been a spate of shark attacks in New South Wales. And this is, it's not great. And the government is thinking about different policies that they can put in place to stop them, like paying planes to fly overhead or drones to sort of monitor beaches. We know how much those interventions cost. We don't know what the benefit it is. Until now, it's about $22 million. So in that sense, we've been able to answer that policy question. But I think the real benefit is going to be in developing countries when we can sort of encourage them to preserve their natural assets in the interests of economic development. Thanks.